In this tutorial, I'm going to be taking you through the steps to build your first model, using only the Airfix Supermarine Spitfire starter kit and a few easy to get hold of items. I'll be showing you how to assemble and paint your kit, apply transfers, and along the way I'll be talking about some of the basics and fundamentals of building scale models. My name's Michael and I'm that scale model guy, and it's really important for me to show you how easy it is to get started with scale modelling, and that's why I've made this tutorial. So let me show you what you're going to need to get started. And so anyone can follow along, I'll be limiting myself to only what comes in the Airfix starter kit and a few easy to get hold of items. In the Airfix starter kit, you get your 172 scale Supermarine Spitfire, which has been designed specifically for new hobbyists, along with some decals, a starter brush, 4 Humbrol paints, and some poly cement glue to stick your model together. Oh, and don't forget about the instructions. As well as the Airfix kit, I'll be using a generic sanding stick used for filing nails, a pair of scissors, blue tack, cotton buds, cocktail sticks, some kind of tape, paper towel, and some water. Once you have all of these, you're going to need to find a space to paint. Perhaps you've got a desk already, or even just a tabletop somewhere. You just need to make sure you're comfortable and it's well lit so you can see what you're doing. First of all, you'll notice the Spitfire model parts are connected to this plastic frame. This frame is known as a sprue. Each sprue has a letter and each part has a number, and you'll see a sprue plan in the instructions to help you find what part you may be looking for. And once you've had a good look at each sprue and the different parts, we want to give it a clean with some warm soapy water. This is just going to remove any oils and dirt that may still be on them from the moulding process, which could interfere with painting later on. And whilst those sprues are left to fully dry, let me explain what the 172 is all about. 172 refers to the scale in which this model is made and how big it is compared to the actual size of what the model represents. For example, an actual Spitfire is 72 times bigger than this model representation of it. You'll find that the most common scale sizes for aircraft are 172, 148 and 132, and as that second number gets smaller, the model kit will get bigger. Now the sprues are dry, let's start building. Step 1 has us sticking the two halves of the Spitfire body together. Once you've found the part you're looking for, use your scissors to cut that part from the sprue. You'll find you tend to get bits of the sprue left over where the part was attached, which we don't want. To remove this excess plastic, we're going to use our nail file. Gently move the nail file back and forth against the area to remove the leftover sprue connection. Take your time as we don't want to start removing detail on the model. When you're happy you've cleaned up both parts, let's glue them together. You'll see on the instructions that the area you'll need to apply the glue is coloured in yellow. But before we apply any glue, let's dry fit the parts together to see how they join up and connect so we have a better idea once the parts have glue on them. The glue used to stick plastic parts together is called poly cement, and this kind of glue is used because it dissolves the plastic, creating a weld. So for example, everyone knows about super glue. When super glue comes in contact with moisture, it reacts to become super sticky, forming a bond holding both parts together. Poly cement is designed specifically to work with plastic. When two parts are stuck together, the poly cement will actually melt both surfaces together, creating a weld which is very strong. The tube the poly cement comes in isn't very user friendly and will make it difficult to apply neatly to our model. To help with this, use your scissors and cut a tab off the starter box. We can then put some of our glue on this tab and use a cocktail stick as an applicator, giving us more control when applying glue to the parts. You only need to apply the glue to one of the surfaces we're gluing together. Make sure both parts are lined up, and when you're ready, firmly press both parts together. If you like, you can use a small amount of tape to keep the parts together as you let the glue dry. Step 2 has us starting the assembly for our nose propeller. I found that it doesn't fit all the way though, but don't worry too much about that. Step 3, we need to put the part we just built inside the nose of the Spitfire and and it's telling us not to use any glue so the propeller can spin. I've decided to glue this in place though, just to make things easier to work with. Once we've put that part where it needs to go, we can glue the front cover of the Spitfire in place, remembering to look where it wants us to put the glue. Step 4 is an exciting step as we now get to work on putting together the wings. It's this step that we also get to glue the pilot seat in place, but I would make sure to leave this until after we've glued the 3 parts of the wing together. Step 5, we glue the tail wings on, and it's now asking us to paint the pilot's chair before we glue the wings to the main body, so let's do that. The paints Airfix recommend for painting the model kits are acrylic based paints, which means we can manipulate and thin them with water. The colour we're using to paint the chair is number 30, and you're going to need something to thin your paint on as well, but don't worry, I'll just cut off another piece of the starter box, as the shiny side of it makes a perfect palette to thin and use your paint on. Give the paint a good shake first of all, as time on the shelf means that the paint may have separated. Whenever you're painting, it's a good idea to thin your paints first of all, and I find using an equal amount of water is about right. And when painting, you want to keep your brush moving and try not to go over any area you've just painted. This will prevent creating any unwanted texture as the paint is still drying. Also, because we thinned our paint, you'll find one coat isn't going to be enough. So let your first layer dry and then repeat the painting process until you have a nice solid colour. Now the chair is painted, it's the big moment of attaching the wings to the main body. Again, always make sure to dry fit the parts first. In step 6, we glue the smaller parts to the underside of the Spitfire. After step 6 is when we're going to be doing the majority of painting on the Spitfire. Let's start by painting the top of our Spitfire and the camo pattern. Along with the instructions in the back of your box, you'll see what colours to paint each part, including what the camouflage pattern on the Spitfire should look like. But before we begin, make sure you have your palette, some water, paper towel, and we can make painting the Spitfire easier by using some blue tack underneath for something to hold on to whilst we paint. The first colour I suggest we start with is number 106, as it's easier to paint a darker colour over a lighter colour. So making sure we thin our paint first of all on our palette, with an equal amount of water, we're going to take our time and build up the colour slowly, with multiple layers, making sure to let each layer dry before the next layer is painted. It's time for the more tricky part of painting the camo pattern. So using paint number 30, start by roughly painting on the design, using the back of the box as reference. And once you're happy with the design, you can fill it in. If you've been a bit messy or want to neaten up your design, then all you need to do is use some of the 106 colour to do this. Make sure to let everything dry before moving on to painting the underside of the Spitfire. So when you're ready, let's get the underside of the Spitfire painted using number 64. We want to be as neat as we can when painting up against the other colours we painted, so to get a nice clean line, use the details on the model as a guide where to paint. Next up, we need to get the exhaust and tail wheel painted using number 33. Always make sure to take your time when building and painting scale models. There's no rush, it's meant to be relaxing and enjoyable. Step 7 is where we make the decision to either have the Spitfire flying on the stand or with the landing gear down. Once you've made your decision, it's easier to paint the parts first of all before gluing them in place. I recommend sticking the smaller parts to a cocktail stick with some blue tack, so you've got something to hold on to whilst painting them. The covers are painted using number 64 and number 33 for the wheels. If you chose the lowered landing gears, you'll use the same colours, as well as 106 for the inside of the wheels. Step 8 is the final step, where we'll finish assembling and painting our Spitfire. So we're painting the pilot with paint 30, and their boots with paint 33. The antenna is then painted using paint 106. The nose is painted with number 64 and the propellers with 33. Again, I suggest sticking the pilot, nose cone and antenna to some blue tack. With everything painted, let's do the final assembly together to make sure we get it right. So the pilot goes in first. Now the canopy slots in without any glue. glue the antenna in place, and finally the nose cone with the propeller. Step 9 is the last step in completing our Spitfire build. With everything you now know, you have no problem getting the stand finished and ready to display our Spitfire. But what we haven't covered yet are applying decals to our model, so let's do that. This is a decal sheet, and decal sheets allow us to add details to our model that will be difficult to paint on. The decals themselves sit on a backing sheet that when wet the decals will separate from. Each decal design is also numbered, and the back of the box will show you where that particular decal goes. To release the decals from the backing paper, let's dip the decal in some water. Now lay the decals on the back of your box to let the water do its thing. After a couple of minutes, you'll be able to slide the decal around on the backing paper, meaning you can now lift it off onto the model. To place the decals on the Spitfire, apply some water to the area you're going to place the decal, which will allow you to slide the transfer around until you're happy it's in position. Take your time going around the model, placing your decals. And once all the decals are in place, you can use a cotton bud to remove excess water and to help the decals sit on the surface better. We now want to make sure everything completely dries, which should take about half an hour. We have now finished our beginner build of the Airfix Supermarine Spitfire, and I hope I've been able to give you the confidence and knowledge to go away and have a go at building one yourself. If you enjoyed this tutorial, then please give the video a like and let me know in the comments below. It shows YouTube you enjoyed it, and it'll be shown to more people. As well, make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on future content. I'm ThatScaleModelGuy, and I'll see you in the next video.